Well, hello and welcome back to the Mission Boards channel. I really appreciate you tuning in to see what's new at Mission Boards. And what we're going to be doing today is making a wooden pizza peel. And I just want to show you the process of making that, what it looks like. And it's all going to start with just laying out some strips to form the blank that will ultimately cut into and shape into a pizza peel. So I'm gonna put this camera up on my workbench so you can look down and see what I'm doing as I arrange the parts. And that's what we'll do next. So I have some basic pieces laid out here. All the different products that we make, I try to use similar type strips, similar size strips. And we have a few different sizes, but I try to not add to the complexity of this by adding more different sizes. So ultimately what we're trying to do here today is to make a small pizza peel, and it's that size. And so this is our template. I have it marked out as the template so it doesn't get destroyed. And we're going to use that to lay out the pieces for the pizza peel. And so I've made some wider strips that go in the middle that will comprise the handle part. And I used to use glued up strips here, but I've just found it to be a lot easier, and I think we get a better product if the handle piece is all one solid piece. And this one happens to be red oak. Sometimes we make them out of walnut or maple, but this one's red oak. So just trying to arrange these pieces in a pattern that looks interesting. I have some maple, and I probably need to find something a little bit longer. I just have to make sure that with the size of these, they're capable of being covered by the template. That should work. So we'll just lay these out. Some kind of a pattern that looks nice. So using red oak, cherry, walnut, maple, cherry. Couple pieces of red oak. Maybe I'll put the Purple Heart in between. Try some white oak on the outside, get the template, see how this is working out width-wise. I think that'll be fun. I might substitute some skinnier pieces here. It's a little bit wider than it needs to be. So I'm going to look for a couple of skinnier pieces of walnut. They're all just random width pieces. So if we do that, I think that'll work out pretty well. And then what I typically do is just try to line up the bottom here so that it's straight. Then I just take a wooden pencil and I draw this, copy this template onto the boards, and this helps me to make sure I get them glued glued together in the same order. And it helps me to keep them lined up when I'm doing the gluing process. This line doesn't have to be perfect, it's just a help for the gluing process. So I don't know if you can see the line on there, but I can. And next we're going to go ahead and glue this up. I'll show you what that process looks like. Okay, so I've got this set up to do the glue up. And I have some clamps. I've pre-measured the distance. I usually put blue painter's tape on there. It just helps to keep the glue off the clamps themselves. And so I have those clamps ready to go. Always get the clamps set up, sized, taped before I do anything else. I have here the pieces that we're going to glue together. They're in the order that they go. And so I'm just going to flip them over here on the side that gets the glue applied. And we'll do a few at a time. It's important that you have a process where you always flip them the same way so you don't put one end upside down or backwards or in a way that doesn't work the way you had laid it out. So we use Tight Bond 3, which is the waterproof version of Tight Bond. That's what we use on all of the things that we manufacture here. And we've had great luck with the Tight Bond. It works really well for us. So I'm going to take the ones that have the glue on. You can see my little mark. And we'll get the clamp set up to accommodate this size. And then it's just a matter of putting them on there in order. Different people, I've watched different people do this process and everybody does it a little differently, but this is how it works for me. Let's put the glued edge away from me. And we'll just keep working down through this. All right, so made it to the handle portion. And you may notice there's some different thicknesses. This is kind of a standard thickness that we use for most of our boards. But because the pizza pills end up getting planed very thin, when I make this handle portion for the center, I just use a 3/4 or 7/8 inch stock because I know I'm going to plane all of this off. You'll see that happen here in just a little bit. We just use a standard 4-inch paint roller. This is proven to work really well. We just keep reusing the same one as long as you seal it up. It doesn't dry out, the glue doesn't go bad. You can come back a week or 2 weeks later and just keep using this same roller. It's just the most efficient way we find to apply the glue. And of course the last piece doesn't get any glue on it. So all the pieces are in the clamps. What I usually do now is just try to grab this little piece of tape here, pull it back slightly so I can tighten the clamp up. If you're careful with the glue and the tape, it makes dismantling this and getting the clamps back ready to be used again, it makes all that a lot easier if you just take a little time and do it this way ahead of time. How much pressure to put on the clamps is always seems to be controversial in woodworking, but I clamp them, and I clamp them good. I know some guys think that you shouldn't put much pressure, that you squeeze out the glue. In all my years of doing this, I've just never found that to be the issue or the problem. I always try to put some clamps on the bottom, some on top, because pipe clamps do tend to want to buckle all the little pieces. So if you stagger the way the clamps are applied and put some on the top and some on the bottom, you get more equal pressure. But I'm going to turn these until I can't turn them anymore. And then I'm going to go back and double check them and see if I can turn them again. So to me, that's a well clamped board. And we'll let something like this dry at least overnight. Sometimes they sit here and dry for days. But they really need overnight. 24 hours I think is a good drying time. You can work them a lot quicker than that if you have to. I've done it in 6 hours or so. But oftentimes the glue isn't completely dry. So I just find it works best if you just wait and be patient and wait a day and then unclamp this. So that's how we get to this point. We have a glued up blank. We'll let it dry and then we'll keep working on it here again. Okay, well, through the wonderful magic of video recording, I have another blank that is dry, and we're going to continue the process of showing you how we make one of our small pizza pills. This is not the same blank that you just saw me glue up, but one I glued up earlier. But the process is the same for all of them. So I'm going to unclamp this. This is dried, I believe, for 2 days. It's been sitting in these clamps. So I'm just going to take the clamps off. Take the tape off of the clamps, make sure the clamps are operable. And this particular blank is made out of, has a center piece that's made out of walnut, and the walnut wasn't quite wide enough at the top for the top of the handle. So I just glued a couple extra little scrap pieces on there that I think will accommodate the handle. You'll see how all that works out here in a minute. There's kind of the rough blank for a small pizza peel, and I'll show you how we go about processing that in just 1 second. So the first thing that we're going to do before we mark the template on here again, before we do anything else, is we're going to scrape this, make sure there's no big puddles of glue. I particularly want this one side, which is usually the bottom side when it was in the clamps. I want this one side to be as smooth as possible. And I just use paint scrapers. I think I got these at Harbor Freight. And I try to rub my hand over it just to make sure there's no sharp spots or bumps that I miss. And this other side, I usually scrape it too. It's not as important. I need one smooth side that's turned down on the planer. Now we're ready to plane. So we'll go over to the planer. We'll get the machine running. I'll show what it looks like to run this through the planer. All right, so I'm over at the planer. I'm about ready to start up the machine, turn on the dust collection. It's going to get noisy here. But what you're going to see me do is run this blank through the planer several times. And I'm going to keep flipping it over, flip it over, plane it, flip it over, plane it. And I'm going to keep doing that until I hit the desired thickness. And I'll show you what it looks like. This is where the magic starts to happen. The blank looks pretty rough right now. It's not smooth at all, and it just doesn't look like a cohesive kind of product. But it's going to change a lot here when we run it through the planer, so I'm going to show you that. Okay, so I'm back over at the workbench, and what I'm going to do now is to use the template. Since we have this this blank, it's been planed. You can see it's all beautiful at this point. The pieces are blended nicely. There's no gaps. And the next thing we're going to do is mark out, using the template, work out where we're going to cut this on the bandsaw. And so what I'm really trying to do is to get this centered, make sure it all fits on the blank. It looks pretty good right there. And then this time when I mark it, it's going to be important that it's heavy mark, that I can see cut on the bandsaw. So I'm going to go over it a couple times. Now it looks pretty good. It can be very difficult to see a lead pencil mark in dark walnut sometimes. But I think I can work with that. So the next process is to go over to the bandsaw and try to cut this shape out. I'm going to cut very close to the line, but not exactly on the line, because I'm going to use the template with some double face tape to run the template against a router with a follow bit on it. And I'll show you how that happens here in a minute. But first we're going to go over and cut this out on the bandsaw. Okay, so I have rough cut this blank on the bandsaw. I don't know if you got to see the whole thing. I think I forgot to turn the camera on in the very beginning, but just pretty simple. Cut close to the line, but don't cut the line. And so I have the blank here. This is the side I marked. This is the way this template's going to go on there, so we got to make sure we keep that correct. And I just use double-sided tape. I know there's guys that prefer certain brands. Still looking for the one that I think is really great. This is Gorilla Tape, I think. And I ran out of it, so we're going to use a different brand here. So you want to press them down, make sure they're on there good. Try to make sure they're flat, no wrinkles. And then the tricky part, of course, is to peel that top layer off. All right, so now, important to get this lined up the first time. Do-overs aren't very easy here. So I'm just gonna try and feel it before I set it all down and push it together. That should do it. So there's the template. It's double stick tape together. You can see that the blank is just a little bit bigger slightly the whole way around than the template. And what we're going to do next is to run this through a router with a pattern bit on it, and it will follow the template with the ball bearing, and it will trim the blank down to the exact same size of the set pattern. And this works pretty well. I've learned over the years to not try and cut up here on the top of this. When you get on that cross grain right there, it really wants to throw it, and it's kind of scary. So I've learned to just avoid that. And instead, I'll just sand this. I want to make sure that I mark this real well before I forget at the end and take the template off. That should do it, and I'll move you over to the router table. I have several routers here. I think I own about 7 routers, but I have 3 of them set up in the table behind me. They're all Triton 3¼ horsepower routers, I believe. And each one has a bit that always stays in there. Someday I'm going to do a shop tour and show you more of the details of the shop. But I just like things to be set up permanently. Don't have to adjust them. So this pattern bit's always in there. The only time it would come out is if I put a new bit in someday, which I'm getting close to needing a new bit. We've used this one for a year now, and it still cuts okay, but a new, nice sharp one would be better. So I'm going to take you over there, and we're going to cut this down to the template with the router. Okay, so I have used the router with the pattern bit, and I've trimmed the blank down exactly to the pattern. The only exception is right here, which we will create with the sander. So now I'm just going to pry these two apart, and the double stick tape can really hold well, so I usually end up just using a hammer and a chisel, tapping it apart. And if you're wondering, can you now stick another, if you had another blank ready to go, could you stick another blank on there and route it again? Yes, I've routed 3 or 4 different ones at a time before I change the tape. But you just want to make sure that it's sticking good and it's holding it. And if you notice, when I use the router, I never get my fingers on the same side of the template. I never get my fingers on the same side as the router bit. I just try to keep them away from it. Every once in a while something will catch on a router and it'll throw it at you, and it's a very scary thing. And I don't want to lose any fingers to a router. So we're done with the template, and this is what we have at this point. Everything's pretty well shaped. What I need to do next is set up the table saw to cut the rough bevel on here. There's a bevel that's at the bottom of the pizza peel, and we'll do that next. Okay, hopefully you can see this well. So what I'm going to do now is cut the bevel on the bottom of this. And I've installed this jig. I have to move the dust collector and the blade guard. I have to move those things out of the way so that I can do this. It's the same angled jig that I use to make the part for the rip saw, but it helps. You could do all this with a sander if you wanted to sand more, but it helps just to cut away the majority of the material. And so I try to look at this and pick a best side if there is a best side. And this all looks pretty even to me. I'm going to cut with this side up. So I'm going to turn on the dust collector. Still some dust collection going down here underneath the table saw. So I'm going to turn that on. You'll hear the noise and you can watch me cut this. Okay, so I have rough cut a bevel on there. Hopefully you can see that. It burns a little bit. It's not a cut that's for the faint of heart. It's an experienced woodworker cut, I think. But it saves a lot of time in trying to get this all off with a sander. So the next step is just to run this through the drum sander. And then we're going to use a belt sander to finish up this bevel. And then we'll hand sand the whole thing. Drill a hole, and we'll call it done here shortly. So hang with me, we're going to do some sanding next. In order to keep everything uniform, I have a jig set up on the drill press, and what this jig does, it has a little notch in it, so I make sure that all the handles, all the boards that have handles have to fit within this notch, and it's just one way that helps us size them and keep them consistent. And then that enables me to drill a hole that's on center, and so we'll do that here in just a second. Okay, so I put just a little bit of blue painter's tape on there. It just helps prevent any tear out as we go through. You can use a scrap wood underneath, but I found the tape helps a lot, and it's just easier and quicker. So we're going to drill this up. So pretty simple and easy, no great tear out. The tape helps a lot, like I said. All right, so we're ready to run this through the drum sander. Alright, so at this point both the big surfaces are nice and smooth and they're sanded up to about 180. And so what I'm going to do next is use a belt sander, a hand belt sander to work on this bevel, try to get it looking nice. All right, 2 more steps is all we have left to get this finished. So I'm gonna, first of all, route the edges with a 1/8 inch bit. It's a round over bit, and that'll just soften up all these edges. And then I'm gonna sand it with, hand sand it with 120 and 220 grit. And that should be it. It should be ready to be dipped after that. So let's go ahead and route it. So there you have it. Now it's ready to dip into the mineral oil, and that's when it really comes to life. I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so here is the finished board, and I'm gonna drop it into the mineral oil, and you can watch the magic happen here. And it turns into something pretty brilliant, and you can see the variation in the grain a lot more and the different wood colors. It's pretty amazing what happens when we put it in the mineral oil. So we'll let it soak in there for several hours, and it'll be ready to package up to sell. So welcome back. I just wanted to take you through the final processes that we go through with our products. So this is the pizza pill that we made a couple days ago. And it has been in the drip rack, dripping off for a couple days, and there's no longer any visible oil on it. So at this point it's ready to be packaged up. And the final thing that we do is to take this wooden small pizza peel and apply our board butter on it. So our board butter that we make ourselves is a mixture of mineral oil that's cooked with carnauba wax in it, and it also has a little bit of beeswax in it. And so when we mix those things together and heat them up, they combine and we get a nice little paste. And this paste is important because it helps to preserve the wood and keep it from drying out. It helps it to keep looking like it's moist all the time. So it's a product that we make a lot of and we sell. And I'm just going to put a little bit of our board butter on there this morning. I hope you can see, I don't know if you can, but how much that shines up the wood. Just really adds some moisture. The board butter, all the ingredients in the board butter are food safe. Don't really recommend that you eat them, but if by chance you did, it wouldn't harm you. So there you have it. Depending on the humidity, the temperature it gets stored at, this will retain this shiny look for several weeks. But that's the purpose of the board butter, is to help keep the wood moist, keep it from cracking or drying out. And then the final step that we go through is just to put one of our tags on this. So we have mission board tags, tells you a little bit about the ministry on one side, and on the back side it has some care instructions on how to take care of your, in this case, wooden pizza peel. So we usually just put these on the handle. Just like that, and it's ready now to be taken to one of our stores and displayed on the rack for sale. Thanks for watching Mission Boards. If you like this information, if you find it at all interesting, please like and subscribe to our channel, and we'll keep producing new videos and bring you along on this journey. Thank you.